Can you beat Starcraft 2 Heart of the Swarm with a DDR Pad? Somehow, I don't think this one will be as hard as Wings of Liberty. Like with Wings of Liberty, I'm doing this run on normal, though I do change it to faster game speed. Also, there's a link to an unedited playthrough in the description if you feel like subjecting yourself to that. This opening mission is pretty much just a tutorial, so I'll take this time to explain how some things work. My controls are the same as last time, being up, down, left, and right for mouse movement, up left for left click, up right for right click, start for shift, select for F2, bottom right for T, and bottom left for Q. If you want to know why I chose what I did, go watch the start of Wings of Liberty, I explain it there. With that out of the way, now it's time to talk about Zerg. There are a lot of differences between Terran and Zerg macro, the biggest being overlords. Zerg don't get their supply from buildings like Protoss or Terran do, instead they have to make overlords. They come from larvae like any Zerg unit, which makes them incredibly easy to build, especially compared to supply depots and pylons. This made me realize I was hotkeying wrong. I thought I could only ever hotkey one unit to larvae or production structures, but I forgot they don't need to attack, which frees up another hotkey. This makes getting more supply of Zerg as easy as pushing a button a couple of times. And while we're on the topic of production, Zerg works a little differently compared to Terran and Protoss. Rather than having to build more buildings to build units out of, all of your units come straight from your hatchery. You will have to build a couple tech buildings to actually unlock units, but there is very little actual base building involved with Zerg. All of this together makes Zerg the easiest faction to build stuff with, which certainly wasn't what I was expecting. And if that wasn't enough, you get Kerrigan in this campaign, which we'll get to that later. Being a tutorial, this mission is really easy. All you have to do is make some Zerglings and attack the enemy with them. Though there is one small annoyance in the first few missions. I don't get access to select all army until the end of Rendevous, so I'm stuck with box selecting and double-clicking my Zerglings to try to control them. It's not ideal, but it really is just a minor annoyance. Throughout the mission, there's 3 bonus objectives which you can destroy, which release a bunch of Zerglings you can control. You have incredibly limited production on this first mission, so this is by far your best source of Zerglings. Just as long as you don't leave any behind. The Eradicator is just frankly terrible at its job, but once it goes down, it's on to back in the saddle. This mission is our introduction to Kerrigan. Unfortunately, I'm stuck with her default ability since I don't get to change them for a while, and this mission is great at showing why I want to change them. Her first ability is Kinetic Blast, and this is the one I choose to hotkey for now. The ability is simple but very powerful. It deals a lot of damage to a single target at a pretty solid range. But it shares the same problem that most of Kerrigan's abilities will have. It's targeted. Targeted abilities are just incredibly hard to aim. While it can be worth trying to use, more often than not, what I'm trying to target will be dead by the time I'm able to actually target it. This is even worse when the ability isn't hotkeyed. Crushing Grip is the other ability Kerrigan gets access to this mission. It's a small AoE stun that does a good amount of damage too. Normally I think this is probably the strongest ability that Kerrigan gets access to, barring the ultimates of course, but I just can't really use it here. In the second part of the mission, you're on a time limit as you move between rooms, which initially I thought would be a challenge, but it turns out there's like barely any units on normal. The only concerning part of this mission is the Ultralisk that you have to kill. Fortunately, Ultralisks are big, so it's easy to land a Kinetic Blast, and while that doesn't quite kill it, it damages it enough that I can tank the rest of the way. I thought the tram section would be a challenge too, but it turns out on normal the Marines can almost do all of the work themselves. I do almost die to a couple siege tanks towards the end, but fortunately the tram has health pickups. The mission ends with a boss fight against the Archangel, which is certainly a boss fight. I definitely have to dodge the missiles, and I certainly can't just stand there shooting it. Well, after that thrilling boss fight, I'm on to Rendezvous. Rendezvous was the first real mission in Heart of the Swarm. The goal is to survive for 15 minutes against the Dominion's attacks. Once the 15 minutes are up, you get reinforcements to go destroy the cannon in the top right of the map. The biggest problem with this mission is that you don't have access to many units, only Zerglings and Queens. And your Zerglings don't have their mutations or evolutions yet, so they're pretty bad. So for the most part, I'm just making Queens. If I have a large excess of minerals, I'll put some of that into Zerglings, but the priority is always Queens. There are also caves on this mission that contain free units if you can free them. However, I decided it wasn't worth it to try to free them. If I had access to select all army by this point, I probably would have, but I didn't think it was worth the hassle without it. As for the attack waves themselves, they're fine. Normally on Brutal, the attack waves are actually pretty scary, but since I'm playing on Normal, they're not too big of a problem. Once 15 minutes are up, the reinforcements arrive, and I finally get access to Select All Army. Once that happens, I just tell my army to go attack the cannon, and then I sit down and watch them destroy the base. After this mission, I can choose to go to Kaldir or Char. I go to Kaldir first because Roaches and Hydralisks are much more versatile and important units than Banelings and Aberrations. Rendezvous also unlocked the Zergling mutations. Usually, when you unlock a unit, you get to pick between one of 3 different mutations to buff it. For the Zergling mutation, I pick attack speed because extra damage is always good. Harvest of Screams is very dramatic for what this mission actually is. The goal for this mission is to destroy the 3 Psylings scattered throughout the map so the Protoss can't contact Shakuras. To help with this, flash freezes periodically hit the map and freeze all of the Protoss. But it doesn't affect the Zerg because I killed an Ursidon Matriarch and Abathur used his special Zerg sci-fi magic, and now the cold doesn't affect any of the Zerg. I never thought about how ridiculous that was until now. Also, why are there no flash freezes on the next mission? Is this the only part of the planet that gets this cold? Anyway, I unlock Roaches on this mission. They're alright, they're probably better than Zerglings, but they'll be a lot better once I get their evolutions and mutations. The mission itself is mostly just slowly building up an army and attacking whenever the enemy is frozen. I suppose this is a good time to talk about expanding, since on Normal you get a free hatchery up here. In Wings of Liberty I never bothered expanding, since it was already hard enough to actually make units. However, with Zerg, it's really easy to make units, which makes it a lot easier to have time to expand. I think it really helps that Zerg is consolidated around one main building. I still won't always expand, because on Normal it's just frankly not needed, but I'll often take the opportunity to. I imagine expanding won't be so easy once I do Legacy of the Void, but that's for later. Back to the mission, it's really easy. I just build up an army and attack the Protoss while they're frozen. Since I don't have access to many units or good Kerrigan abilities, I just have to wait till they're frozen. The bases would just be too much to try to attack if they were all able to fight back. After this is Shoot the Messenger. For the Roach mutation, I pick extra armor when it's below half health. I also finally unlock the ability to choose Kerrigan's abilities. Generally, the abilities I am choosing are ones that require as little effort as possible. So I pick Heroic Fortitude because it's just extra health, and I pick Chain Reaction because it's area damage that I don't have to click a button for. Bad news, the Protoss killed an Ursidon Matriarch, and now they're immune to the cold. Even worse, they figured out a way to get off of the planet. So obviously I have to put a stop to that. In this mission I unlock the Hydralisk, which is a good Zerg ranged unit. The goal for this mission is to shoot down shuttles before they're able to escape. This is shockingly easy. I know I'm playing on Normal, but there's just almost no units guarding the shuttles. The only hard part is dealing with the attack waves the Protoss send. Generally, how I deal with attack waves is just leaving my production at home. Whenever I need to go out onto the map, I take whatever I have, and then all of my production will stay home and defend. On Normal, this is usually enough, and I rarely have to come back to defend my base. Even the double shuttle waves barely have any units defending them. Somehow, the mothership gets stranded on the final wave, and I don't even have to fight that before I kill all of the shuttles. The good part about this mission is that it unlocks the Zergling Evolution. In Heart of the Swarm, most of the units get access to an evolution, which is a choice between one of 2 permanent upgrades for that unit. To unlock evolutions, you have to do a short evolution mission which shows off both of the options you can choose. All of these missions are basically just attacking with the units you get, so I won't showcase all of it. I will, however, talk about the options and explain why I chose what I did. The first option for Zerglings is the Raptorling. Raptorlings are able to jump up and down cliffs, and they will jump to their targets. This is very helpful since it means you don't have to take the movement speed mutation. And Raptorlings also get +2 damage for some reason, which helps the attack speed mutation a lot. The next option for Zerglings are Swarmlings. Swarmlings build almost instantly and spawn in pairs of 3 instead of 2. This sounds really good, but that third Zergling isn't entirely free. It actually takes up supply. Also, the instant building isn't really all that helpful. Oftentimes, if you're being attacked, you'll want more than just Zerglings to deal with it. So I choose Raptorlings. For the Hydralisk upgrade, I pick extra range because I think it's the most versatile of all the options. Enemy Within wasn't really hard, it was just obnoxious the entire time. In this mission, you get to control a queen who gets to spawn an infinite number of units, and your goal is to destroy all of the Protoss. To help you along the way, there's animals which you can harvest for their biomass to make you stronger. The opening section with the larvae isn't too bad, but the troubles start soon afterwards. You're probably thinking all of the trouble comes from spawning units. While it's certainly slower than normal, it's actually pretty easy. The problem is the animals. There are so many animals. Consuming animals is a chore. It's pretty difficult to target all of these, and you really need to consume them all. The worst part is that this isn't even hard, it's just time-consuming and frustrating. This room takes me 2 minutes to get through. Normally it takes me maybe 20-30 seconds at most. I won't talk about every room, but just know that this is happening in almost all of them. As for the rest of the mission, it's fairly normal. Another benefit of Raptorlings is that they're great for this mission. The +2 damage helps a lot, makes it so you don't really want to make any roaches or hydras. The whole reason to collect all this biomass is so that Niadra can evolve. This increases your supply cap and unlocks new units. But the Protoss are really easy, so all you need is Zerglings. You only need Zerglings for the ending section as well. They just output so much DPS and you can infinitely spawn them, so it doesn't matter that they die quickly. After this mission is the Roach Evolution, then I get a choice to go to Char or Xeris. I'm going to Xeris because Primal Kerrigan is broken and I want her as soon as possible. The first option for the Roach Evolution is the Corpser Roach. When enemies are hit by a Corpser Roach and die shortly afterwards, they spawn 2 Roachlings. They're decent for taking damage, but they don't really do a whole lot themselves. Also, the Roachlings are annoying to control with the DDR Pad. They're still a decent option, but the Belial Roach is much better. Belial Roaches attacks debuff enemies by reducing their attack and movement speed by 75%. This debuff shuts down almost any enemy hit by it. And it's really easy to control this playthrough, so it's the obvious choice here. For Waking the Ancient, the goal is to hunt Quillbor around the map and feed him to Zervin in the middle just below your base. You also have to stop Brack's forces from destroying the Quillbor meat. If you're wondering, yes, this is just Welcome to the Jungle, but Zerg edition. Though this time you at least unlock a decent unit, being the Mutalisk. Initially, I didn't think I would need to use Mutalisks on this mission, but I quickly found out their mobility would be very helpful. They're the best option I have to stop Brack's horses from destroying the meat, since they're very fast and they fly. If Brack is destroying meat close to me, I can just use my normal army to stop them. But if Brack is destroying meat on the opposite side of the map, the only thing I can do to stop them is Mutalisks. I learned this when Brack destroyed one of the Quillbor close to me while my army was on the opposite corner of the map trying to claim a bonus objective. But once I figured out I needed Mutalisks, the rest of the mission was pretty easy since you can take as much time as you need. I did almost miss a bonus objective since it took me 3 times to get Kerrigan to actually pick it up. At the end of the mission, Brack does come to attack you, but I don't know what he was expecting. Now off to the Crucible. For the Mutalisk, I picked Sundering Glaive, which is its single target mutation that makes it deal more damage. Oh boy, just what I wanted, a holdout mission. The goal here is to defend Kerrigan's Chrysalis while she becomes a magic super Zerg. Fortunately, we unlock swarm hosts for this. Even more fortunately, this is the only mission where swarm hosts are even remotely good. Their whole gimmick is that they can root and spawn locusts, which do somewhat okay damage and tank kind of well. The big difference compared to normal here is that I don't try to defend all 3 different sides. Instead, I just pile all of my units in the middle by the Chrysalis, because I don't want to have to deal with moving them around constantly. It works well enough. It was worse compared to the Dig, but I think that's mostly because Zerg isn't a very good defensive race. The bonus objective for this mission is kind of fun. There's a Tyrannosaur at the bottom of the map below 2 fighting Zerg factions. The best way to deal with this is to make Mutalisks and fly over the fighting Zerg to get to it. Since I took the single target mutation for Mutalisks, they make quick work of the Tyrannosaur. The hardest part of defending this mission was dealing with the air units. But between the Mutalisks and the Locusts you can spawn, I made short work of them too. Overall, this mission wasn't too hard, I just had to make a bunch of swarm hosts. And now I have Primal Kerrigan. For the swarm host, I picked the mutation that lets it attack both ground and air targets. just in case I accidentally make one, because I'd like it to at least do something. Supreme is the introduction to Primal Kerrigan in the third column of abilities she unlocks. The first ability is Leaping Strike, which is basically just a worse kinetic blast. It makes you jump to a target and do a lot of damage, but it puts you in a lot of danger too. But more importantly here, it's targeted, and it's very hard to target, so I won't use it outside of this mission. The next ability is Psionic Shift, which is basically just a short dash. It's alright, but not nearly good enough for me to want to bother with it. Mend, however, is incredible here. It's a large heal on Kerrigan and a smaller heal on your surrounding units. This is the ability I choose to hotkey, not only because it's pretty powerful, but it's also incredibly easy to use. It's easy to use because there's no targeting involved. All I have to do is push the button. Basically, from here until the end of the campaign, I will be spamming this as much as possible. For the mission itself, it's mostly just dealing with a bunch of bosses. Most of the sections before the bosses aren't worth talking about, so I'm just going to skip over them. Yagdra might actually be the most difficult of all of the bosses. They frequently burrow around the arena and leave eggs every time they do. Normally, killing the eggs is easy, just leaping strike the big ones and dash through the small ones, but I can't exactly do that. Generally, by the time I'm able to target Kerrigan's abilities, the eggs will already be hatched. This means I'm left with attack moving into the eggs and hoping my units kill them fast enough. I also can't ignore the eggs because the enemies they spawn would actually overrun me. But once I get control of the eggs, the rest of the fight isn't too bad. The only other attack that's actually a problem is the Fire Beam. I do have to move out of the way for this one, and I can't just tank it. This fight is slow since I also can't Leaping Strike Yagdra, which is normally a majority of your DPS. But with enough patience, Yagdra goes down and it's on to Kraith. Kraith is probably the easiest of all of the bosses. It is difficult to dodge all of his attacks, but I can just out-heal them, so perfect dodging isn't necessary. He doesn't spawn that many Zerglings on normal, so even without abilities I'm able to clean up the Zerglings by the time he attacks again. He doesn't have that much health either, so the fight ends pretty quickly. Before I move on to Sliven, I want to give a shout out to the last bonus objective for being a pain. You have to Leaping Strike between a bunch of platforms while Ravissors are shooting acid at you. Fortunately on normal there's not too many Ravissors, so I can take my time. And with that bonus, now it's on to Sliven. For Sliven, I do have to dash through the little Baneling she spawns. But very fortunately she doesn't have a lot of health, so she dies before she becomes a problem. And I don't even want to imagine how bad Sliven would be. Zervin is pretty much the most face-tankable of all of the bosses. Slams don't one-shot your unit, so you have time to heal them. The only problematic attack he has is whatever this thing is. While it kills my units, he only uses this at low health, so Kerrigan has plenty of time to finish off the fight. And now it's time for Char. Now that I have Primal Kerrigan, she gets access to a third column of abilities. I stick with Mend because it's easy to use, and I pick Automated Extractors because it's just really good. For the fifth row, I pick Twin Drones because it's just the best out of all of them. Now that the only defense mission in Heart of the Swarm is done, we get to unlock Zerg's good defensive units. The first option is the Impaler. While burrowed, the Impaler has a strong single-target attack. This attack does extra damage to armored units, but it'll still kill anything. The other option is the Lurker. When burrowed, the Lurker has an AoE attack that does a lot of damage to light units. Unlike the Impaler, however, it's pretty much only good versus light units. It also has a lot less range than the Impaler, which makes its uses a lot more limited. So I choose to go with the Impaler. The goal for Domination is to collect 100 eggs throughout the map before Zagara does. And now I have Primal Kerrigan, so this mission is incredibly easy. I just attack Zagara whenever she pops up, and I spend the rest of my time collecting eggs. While Primal Kerrigan is certainly really powerful, there's barely any threats on this map in the first place, making this mission really easy. Once I collect 100 eggs, I get a bunch of Banelings, and I just F2 Zagara's base and win. For Banelings, I pick an increased blast radius. Before Fire in the Sky, I swap to Malignant Creep. This does a couple of things, but most important is that it makes my creep spread faster. For Fire in the Sky, I have to spread creep tumors to the 7 Scourge nests throughout the map to take down the Gorgons that Warfield sends at me. If you don't know what creep is, it's the gray stuff around Zerg bases. It provides a movement speed bonus to all Zerg units, but I don't normally bother with it because it's not nearly important enough. However, this mission is all about creep spreading, so we get a really fun highlight as to why I don't bother. Creep is primarily spread through creep tumors, which can be created by other creep tumors and queens. The big problem for me here is that creep tumors are tiny and hard to click on, so I'm going to try to avoid clicking on creep tumors as much as possible. To do this, I'm just going to make a giant army of queens. Queens aren't great units, but they're not terrible either, so a giant army of queens can work for this mission. More importantly, this makes laying creep tumors a lot easier. The most important thing I do this mission is to delay killing the Gorgons as much as possible. It doesn't matter when you kill the Gorgons, Warfield will always send another one as soon as one's destroyed. So if you kill the Gorgons immediately, you'll quickly run out of time to get to the next Scourge nests. Since my entire army is queens, it makes it a lot easier to lay creep as I go. I even managed to benefit somewhat from the malignant creep attack speed increase. What I don't think I can adequately explain is just how stressful this mission was. At no point was I ever on the brink of failure or anything, but this mission really made me feel like it. But I do manage to play this mission well enough that I'm able to activate the last 3 Scourge nests at the same time. Well, I try to anyway, but a queen decided it didn't want to actually place a creep tumor. And with this done, it's on to Old Soldiers, which is a much easier, less stressful mission. Old Soldiers opens with an attack where you are supplied with lots and lots of Banelings and Zerglings. During this attack, I managed to clear both the gold base and the east base. Afterwards, I gain control of the base and unlock Aberrations. Aberrations are fairly strong melee units, and I'll be using them until I unlock Ultralisks. However, since they don't get any evolutions or mutations, they're pretty much outclassed by Ultralisks once you unlock them. The rest of this mission is pretty normal. I didn't feel like expanding, so I just made a large army of Aberrations and Hydralisks, and that was enough for Warfield's base. It's also worth noting that Warfield will try to nuke you throughout this mission, but you have plenty of time to get out of the way. And with that, I'm done with Char. This mission unlocks the Baneling Evolution, and then after that I get to choose from the Space Missions or Skygear Station. I'll be doing the Space Missions first, since I want the Kerrigan levels for Skygear Station. The first option for Banelings are the Splitter Banelings. As the name implies, these split into 2 smaller Banelings when they explode. The smaller Banelings don't have as much health or damage, but they're still decent. The next option are Hunter Banelings. These Banelings gain the ability to jump up and down cliffs and will jump to their targets like Raptorlings. Unfortunately, Hunter Banelings have a bad habit of making the enemy run away from them before the Baneling can jump to them. This makes them very ineffective. Not that I intend on making any Banelings anyway, but I go with the Splitter Banelings just to be safe. With friends like these is probably the hardest part of the Swarm mission with the DDR Pad. I wasn't expecting this initially, but that's only because I forgot this mission exists. The goal for this mission is to use the Hyperion to destroy all of Mira's bases throughout the map. The main problem is that all of the Hyperion's abilities need to be targeted, except for the EMP field you get later, but that one's not very useful anyway. Most of this mission can be taken as slow as you want, so it's not too bad to use the abilities, but it is certainly annoying. The problem comes from the sections where you can't just take your time. First is the bonus objective pirate ship that you need to kill. Since I don't have to deploy attack fighters super precisely, I can use them, but trying to use the Yamato is almost never worth it. Fortunately, the pirate can mostly just be face tanked, so this isn't too bad, but the final base is where the real problem comes from. Throughout the mission, Mira has mag mines deployed. These target you when you approach them and you need to get out of their way or you'll take a lot of damage. These are fine throughout the map because there's not that many of them and you have plenty of space to maneuver around them. The final base, however, spawns a lot of them really close together and it's really hard to dodge. Usually you can just jump away from them, but that's not an option here with how long it takes me to jump. Sometimes the attack fighters will aggro them away from me, but that almost does more harm than good since I can't predict what's going to happen. So all I can do is try to dodge them. This was rough on a DDR pad. I basically have to preemptively move out of the way to be able to react to them in time. I didn't know this the first time, which is why I died. And I messed up the second time, so I die again. But the third try is the charm, so I, very slowly and very carefully, whittle down the final base. And with that, it's time for Conviction. Conviction is just incredibly easy. It's a no-build mission, which certainly sounds scary, but Kerrigan is so stupidly powerful I can just attack move through the whole thing. And in case this mission wasn't disappointing enough, it unlocks the Swarm Host Evolution. The first swarm host option is the Kerrigan swarm host. This evolution lets the locusts fly, which I think is supposed to be a good and helpful thing, but this also makes the swarm hosts themselves a lot more vulnerable, so I don't know that it's actually a good thing. The other option are creeper hosts. These gain the ability to teleport anywhere there's creep. This is just not useful at all. So I go with the Kerrigan strain because I'd rather have that if I accidentally make a swarm host. Now that Kerrigan's level 50, she gets access to another passive ability. For this one, I just go with Fury, which makes her attack faster because it's just the easiest to use. Infested unlocks the Infestors, which are powerful spellcasters. Unfortunately, being spellcasters, I'm not using them here. Well, that's not entirely true. I still drag them around to infest more garrisons as I go, but I just make a normal army for this map. The only hard part about this mission is trying to defend the virophages, but it's not like the attacks consisting of a whopping 2 fire bats are that threatening anyway. And even if they did somehow destroy a virophage, you can just replant it immediately. There is almost no consequence to actually losing one. I mostly let the infested take care of the map while I focus on doing the bonus objectives. The bonuses are these science facilities that you have to spread creep tumors to, which makes them probably the hardest bonus objective in the whole campaign. But unlike Fire in the Sky, I'm on no time limit here. Infested is a good introduction to the Skygear Station missions. This is because, like the other 2 missions, they're disappointingly easy if you just take your time. The Infested are really strong on this mission, especially on normal, so just let them do their thing. After this mission, I finally unlock Kerrigan's ultimate abilities. For Kerrigan's ultimate ability, I choose Apocalypse, which is a massive AoE damage ability. The Leviathan is a spellcaster, which I don't want to use, and the drop pods are just not very good, unfortunately. They're primal, meaning they don't get your upgrades, and 40 Zerglings, 5 Roaches, and 5 Hydralisks is just frankly not very good. Also, I don't want to deal with trying to add them into my control groups. Hand of Darkness is mostly just a standard macro mission. The whole gimmick for this map is that Hybrid are showing up and putting you on a time limit. However, even on Brutal, this time limit is very generous. Also, the Hybrid just kinda suck, and it's incredibly easy to spawn camp them. And if that wasn't enough, you even get to rescue 2 Brutalists on this map, which are really good at killing the Hybrid. At the end of the mission, I'm even breaking open some of the last Hybrid, because I don't want to sit around and wait for them. This mission is just really easy. Now on to Phantoms of the Void. The first evolution option for Mutalisks are Broodlords. These are long-range, high-power siege units, but they're very vulnerable. Unfortunately, these are units that tend to be pretty good when the AI uses them against you, but when you get them yourself, they're not that great. However, the other option is Vipers. Vipers are spellcasters that require a lot of control to use. They're very rewarding if you can, but I can't. This is the only evolution mission I actually struggled with. I don't plan on making either of these units, but if I accidentally do, I'd rather have the Broodlord, so I choose that. Phantoms of the Void is the mission where you have to help Kerrigan with her Dragon Ball Z laser battle with Narud. Also, why do Heart of the Swarm mission names have to be so dramatic? Good lord. Anyway, as you might have imagined, you don't get to control Kerrigan in this mission. But fret not, Heart of the Swarm is incapable of giving you a mission where you can't control a hero unit, so instead we get to use Stukov. Annoyance aside, Stukov's actually pretty good normally. He has 2 abilities. One, he can spawn infested Terrans, which is nice, but not that important. His main ability is Corrosive Blast, which is kind of a super-powered kinetic blast. Enemies hit by Corrosive Blast will take increased damage for a few seconds afterwards. This is really helpful with dealing with the hybrid this mission throws at you. However, I don't think I can really use it effectively, so I'm pretty much on my own. Fortunately, however, this mission unlocks Ultralisks, and hybrid aren't a problem a couple particularly disgruntled Ultralisks can't solve. The actual goal for this map is to deactivate 5 temples by bringing Stukov to them. When you go to deactivate a temple, a wave of Protoss will try to stop you, as well as a couple hybrid. Despite what the mission tries to imply, you're not actually on that tight of a time limit, so you can take a lot of time to build up before you go to deactivate any of the temples. Deactivating the temples goes pretty well because Ultralisks are great units, even without their evolutions or mutations. The hardest part about the temples was a couple void rays that my Hydralisks had some struggles getting to. Overall, this mission is pretty easy because Hybrid just aren't that scary. And now it's time for Core Hull. For the Ultralisk, I take its lifesteal ability, though in hindsight I probably should have taken the extra AoE damage instead. Planetfall is up first, and this mission has us defending bio launchers as they reach the planet's surface. For this mission, I didn't feel like teching up all the way to Ultralisk, so I just stuck with Roach Hydra. This mission has me do the unthinkable, though. I have to properly control my army with control groups. The problem with this mission is that the Dominion will obviously try to attack the bio launchers. They attack the most while they're initially building, but they'll still keep trying to attack them periodically afterwards. And I can't really afford to drag my main army back every time this happens, so I have to make a second control group of units and keep them on standby for that. But fortunately, this is only normal difficulty, so they don't attack too terribly often. I suppose I should also mention that the bio launchers have a nasty habit of landing in the middle of enemy bases, so you do have to clear those. But it's honestly really easy. For some reason, I go out of my way to do the bonus objective, even though it doesn't actually do anything. Once the bio launchers are all built, you have to destroy the Dominion's base in the top right of the map. I think this only requires the structures, but I'm never sure, so I destroy everything anyway. This mission unlocks the Ultralisk Evolution, which gives you the most powerful unit in Heart of the Swarm, and then after that is Death from Above. For Ultralisks, the first evolution is the Noxious Strain. These give the Ultralisks an ability to release a damaging over time field around them. It's, not great. It's only really useful against, like, a group of Marines, but the Ultralisk itself can already deal with that perfectly fine. The second option, however, is much better. Your other option is the Tarrasque Ultralisk. These Ultralisks will revive themselves once every 60 seconds. This is pretty much as good as it sounds and is the obvious choice here. Death from Above is split up into two parts. First, and twice more throughout the mission, you control the Haka to go slap the Psi Destroyer to turn it off temporarily. These sections are the hardest part of the mission, but they're not too bad. Since you have access to Mend, you can just spam that to keep yourself and any units you get alive. The main part of the map is just a macro mission. Your goal is to give the Psi Destroyer the big slap to destroy it permanently. It's a little underwhelming. But more importantly, why are there minerals on this map? This is a giant ship that Minsk made. He had to have purposefully put the minerals and gas here. Did he just want the Doofenshmirtz self-destruction policy? Anyway, the second Dahaka section's about the same as the first. You just have a few roaches to help you this time. The third Dahaka section is actually pretty difficult, however. There are just a lot of units to get through, and it's hard to use Dahaka's spawns very well. The main problem is trying to take out all the units on the high ground while keeping your main army under control. It's just really hard. Towards the end, I do end up losing Dahaka since I get careless with them. Fortunately, my surviving primal forces are able to take out the Psi-Link on their own. Now that the Psi Destroyer field is permanently offline, I just attack the final objective and make it even more permanently offline. Time for the final mission, the Reckoning. The Reckoning is just a really big macro mission, but the enemies are pretty strong. All enemies on this map are their elite variants, meaning they do much more damage and have more health and armor. Despite this, it mostly still plays out the same. Kerrigan's still overpowered, and the good units are still the good units, so you just make those. You do get attacked quite a bit on this mission, but once you start clearing bases, even that slows down a lot. One thing to spice this mission up, however, is that Jim and the Hyperion will land and try to help you. Emphasis on the try. The Hyperion does get frequently attacked in this mission, so you have to help defend it. To defend it, I make 6 Impalers and send them over to the Hyperion, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. With the Impalers, the only thing they'll struggle against are battlecruisers, so we'll have to help with the battlecruiser attack wave, but other than that, they're more than enough to defend Jim on their own.
Morphing Hydralisks or Mutalisks will allow us to destroy the enemy's flyers.
Half of my army are Hydralisks. There are also 3 bonus objectives on this map. When you clear these, an extra wave of Zerg gets released to help clear the map. These are helpful, I guess, and I go out of my way to clear them. This is a good mission, but there's just not much to talk about. So I guess I'll do my conclusion now instead of afterwards. Overall, I was really surprised with how easy Zerg was to play. I think the biggest thing that helped is that all of their macro is centered around hatcheries and they're really easy to build. I was really surprised that I was able to take multiple bases. In Wings of Liberty, I discounted that idea entirely with how difficult it seemed to be. It was also just really easy to make units with Zerg. Sure, I could have less of them hotkeyed since I didn't have multiple production structures, but with all the larvae it was really easy to make anything. I also thought, going into this, that Kerrigan would be a lot weaker since I can't use most of her good abilities since they require a lot of micro. I was very wrong, however. Kerrigan is still just comically overpowered, and I don't think there's anything that's going to change that. And like Wings of Liberty, I would recommend trying this if you like Starcraft. Do I think hard or brutal is possible with a DDR pad? I think hard is realistically doable, but before Primal Kerrigan it would be pretty challenging. It's less that you don't have Primal Kerrigan at that point, and more that the units you do have just aren't very good yet. I still think brutal is not possible, because there's just so many units that deal so much damage. Maybe you could do the missions once you get Primal Kerrigan, but anything before that, I don't know. I also don't think Supreme is possible on brutal. I really struggle with that mission for some reason playing normally, so I imagine on a DDR pad it's just straight up impossible. Well, can you beat StarCraft 2 Heart of the Swarm with a DDR pad? Yes, and it's not even that difficult. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna start working on Legacy of the Void, so subscribe if you don't want to miss that.